Welcome to the Flight Club Podcast, a woman's guide to leaning out. We give you a behind-the-scenes look at business launch and growth through the stories of successful female entrepreneurs. Here's your host, Felina Hansen, founder and CEO of Hera Hub.
Hello and welcome. I'm excited for my conversation today with Hank Dearden. He is a natural connector with a passion for all forms of renewable energy, tree planting, and exploring new places by bicycle. He is the founder and executive director of Forest Planet, an organization that supports large-scale reforestation projects around the world. Forest Planet helps plant trees in regions where they have the greatest positive impact on the soil, the environment, and the communities in peril. Welcome to the show today, Hank.
Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to dive into your story. We're going to go way back. I know you were born in Ohio, so Midwest boy, but came out to DC around age 10. So I think you were saying before you kind of dual citizenship with East Coast and Midwest. Is that what you said?
You got it. I feel comfortable in both places. Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. Fantastic. So let's get into your path. I want to start with early education choices that you made. Talk about your education a bit, and then we'll get into your career path from there.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. The good news about the education choices is that I really didn't have any, and baked into where we were living here in Montgomery County, Maryland. Awesome public schools, and that's where we went, through elementary, junior high school, and high school. Lots of opportunities for extracurriculars, though, at every level. But the core curriculum was pretty well set, of course, until you get to high school and you start to choose a little bit. But it's a good public high school. Montgomery County is right near the nation's capital here, so at least my high school represented almost 44 different nationalities.
Wow.
So that was a little bit different because all the kids, their parents are in the embassy staff or whatever.
Yeah.
And it was also interesting, being on the soccer team with, kids, who were from, black kids from sort of Cameroon and white kids from South Africa when the whole apartheid thing was going on.
Wow.
And then certainly, we had, Jewish kids from Israel and Arab kids from Syria and whatever when that was going on. So it was a very interesting education and pretty eye-opening all around. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Amazing. Awesome. And so what caused you to go down the mathematics and engineering path as you went to college?
So it just always made sense. I mean, I love to read. I love words, but I struggle to communicate, so I have to work very hard on that. I don't think I'm a natural in that regard, but I think you try to overcome that. But math and all that just sort of came to me naturally. Having said that, I probably should not have been a math major because after sophomore year, you didn't see any more numbers. Yeah. It was all epsilons, deltas, and sets, and just all kind of ethereal stuff. But oh well, now I know. What they call real analysis, what we call unreal or surreal analysis. It was all imaginary sets and whatever. Couldn't wrap my head around that. So the engineering made more sense, where the numbers apply to real world things like bridges, whether it stood up or not. I enjoyed that a lot. That was a lot of fun.
Awesome, great. And did you go on to get a graduate degree at Dartmouth, or?
Yeah, so they have what's known as a fifth-year dual degree, 5-year dual degree exchange program. It was a little bit of a hybrid where freshmen and sophomore were at Vassar, and that was interesting, being a former women's college. Yeah. And then junior year at Dartmouth, just blitzing the engineering degree because they didn't really have that much engineering at Vassar. And that was fall, winter, spring, and summer because they were on the quarter period. So that was intense. And then hustling right back to Vassar for the fall, senior year, math major. But by then I'm effectively a double major in math and engineering. And then going back to Dartmouth for a fifth year. Graduating 82 from Vassar with an AB in math and all that. But they have a fifth year program, and there's not a whole lot of colleges have this. I think Penn State's another one. It's called a Bachelor of Engineering. It's a fifth year degree, which is a nice way to say it's a graduate degree for people who don't really know what they're doing yet. So, and that was perfect because at an early age, I found out that I really wasn't an engineer, but I wasn't really good at it, but I tracked it and I understood it and I appreciated it as much as anything else. But there was one field that they taught there called systems. And there was a book called Limits to Growth from the 70s. You might be familiar. But basically, people were building simulation models of whole societies, inputs and outputs, and stressors on communities. Is there enough land? Is there enough water? Is there enough food? Is there enough air? And so forth and so on. And all the models, were predicting in the 70s, even earlier, that we're using too many natural resources and we're chugging through this. It's going to be a problem, and we have a model to show that. So that was 50 years ago almost when all that work was done. And some of those people were at MIT at the Sloan School under a guy named Jay Forrester, and they wrote the book Limits to Growth. And two of those professors went on to Dartmouth, so I was able to actually take some classes with them about systems theory and modeling. And what that really was taking an engineering problem-solving methodology and applying it to not necessarily traditional mechanical / engineering situations. So if you're looking at like input-output models and how things all kind of work together, you can apply that to your body. Like how does your body repair from cuts, or psychological issues. Like we built a simulation model of anorexia nervosa and just the dynamics of just what's going on. It's not just one big problem. It was all about disaggregating and analyzing pieces of the problem and then testing your theory constantly. So it was a back and forth of speculation, theorizing, and then testing and sanity checking with your model, which kind of told you pretty quickly, didn't necessarily tell you that you were on base, but it would pretty quickly tell you when you were off base. So it was like a exercise in trying to not be off base, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Understanding. So that we would also apply it to ecosystems like ecology. There were guys who built a soil model, which is soil is very complicated, living thing, as I say, is, dirt is inert, but soil is alive. And we used to call them dirt boys, and they hated that, which is why we called them that. But all the different layers of, fungi that are going on and different types of organisms and all that kind of stuff. It was very interesting. And this was again in the 70s. So the whole science of ecology kind of came out of engineers applying, what I'll call the traditional Gazinta, what goes in, what comes out model of a machine to like a meadow where it's not just a bunch of grass and some trees. It's a very complicated interconnections going on between the flora and the fauna. Yeah. And that's what started ecology. And, we studied the procedure or the process of doing a more rigorous analysis of it with the computer models that then obviously had to be sanity checked and so forth and so on. But that was the big takeaway from Dartmouth, and I really enjoyed being there.
Yeah, and I can see how that, informed a lot of the work that you're doing now, and it looks like throughout your career. So let's get into your career path. Obviously, I want to get to your nonprofit, your organization, the work that you're doing. So, but let's spend a few minutes. It looks like, you've got quite a bit of experience in business development, technology, and obviously a lot of experience in the green sector. So just, take us along your career path here for a few minutes, and then we'll weave into your current venture.
Sure, thanks. So yeah, I mean, I think I kind of fell into business development and sales luckily at an early age. Historically, when you were raised, it was like, oh, sales guys, the first thing you think of is polyester and a used
door to door,
basically
knives.
Right, or just basically trying to talk someone into doing something they don't want to do.
Yeah.
And that's too often the case, and it's too bad. But really, sales, a lot of it is information and empowering, and sort of fell into it when I was at Analog Devices, which was a really well-run company, large company that was high-end semiconductors. And the sales were consultative sales, which really, if you think about it, is mostly what sales is. It's consultative. Like, this is a good fit for you, how and why, and the difference between communicating benefits and features, basic stuff like that. And I really saw that, how critical that was. And you're really kind of connecting, because when it's an Analog Devices, I knew the engineers, I met those, and I met the marketers, the people who sort of spun up the product line and all that kind of stuff. And they were making amazing stuff. I thought that was really, really cool. I mean, this was not trivial stuff that they were coming up with. And we had all manner of customers who were buying it, whether they were in consumer electronics or military or in instrumentation or medical or industrial control, sort of all across the board. And these people needed components to make their equipment work, and then the right components could be game changers. So I quickly realized is that really, when you're coming to sales and business development, it's really kind of about your attitude. Like, no, I'm here to help you. I'm here to make you money, because with our product, you can have a superior offering in your space, and having to understand their space. So really making the connection between, the customer space and their agenda, and then the tool sets and the solution sets that we were coming up with. That was a lot of fun. It was really kind of a Rubik's Cube in some regards. So that was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. That's great. And so what got you into, I'll just broadly say, the green space? I know you spent some time in solar. You were senior director of operations for Trees for the Future. If you'll talk about that organization a bit, what brought you into that industry?
So I think it's just a matter of, like, really sort of like the values and things you value. And then also just the simple reality. If you just look around and remembering those models from the 70s and limits to growth, like, we're kind of heading for a cliff here. Yeah. And I guess I'm one of the people who need to feel fulfillment in the job. Some people who are very dear to me, have good jobs. They're very good at what they're doing, but they don't necessarily get personal fulfillment out of it. They get their personal fulfillment from their family or their church or their other activities, and that's fine. And the job is something that interests them, and it makes money, but it's not fulfillment, right? And they'll admit so much, and that's fine. And they'll live perfectly happy lives and be productive citizens, and that's fine. But I think what I realized, until my 40s, that I needed to have fulfillment, complete fulfillment in my job, which in some ways sounds arrogant, but that's just how it is. And that was always going to probably take some kind of sustainability play, or have a sustainability angle to it, some kind of green, a planet affirming, thing. And then when I met the folks at Trees for the Future, this was a while ago, they were doing a tree planting organization. It's an NGO based here in DC. And the founders started telling me about what they were doing with trees and about how integrated the trees were with the soil restoration and all that. And I immediately got it, where they weren't just planting trees because they're pretty, or because maybe they sequester carbon, which they do, but that's not why they're getting planted.
Yeah.
It's about all kinds of things. It's actually about social stability and community stabilization as much as anything else. Economic development. It touches on all these things. And I completely got that. So I kind of threw myself into that. Had a weird 15 or so year relationship with that organization where I was a vendor and then I wasn't, and I was a board member, then I wasn't, and then I was an employee and then I wasn't, and I won't get into the details. But I was still pretty much sold on the concept whether something like this needed to happen. Yeah. And if you're an engineer, or at least I have an engineer mindset, you're always looking at a system like, where's the fulcrum? Where can I apply the least amount of pressure and have the greatest benefit that checks as many boxes as possible? And the objective reality is that I have yet to find anything where that trumps trees. Mm-hmm. You know, and properly done forest restoration projects check so many boxes. Yeah. You know, you can get so much done with so little and so cheaply and so quickly. And I just love the efficiency of it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, amazing. I want to get into something, Hank, and we, you know, if you say, I don't know anything about this, I don't want to talk about it, it's completely fine. But there is a lot of greenwashing that goes on. And I watched a documentary recently about, carbon offsets and these big corporations that are buying, their way into polluting basically, or, allowing them to continue to pollute by buying these carbon offsets. Just as fascinating to me. Have you seen any of that throughout your time, either with your own organization or the prior organizations that you've been with?
Sure. Yeah, it happens.
Yeah.
And that's why I kind of avoid carbon.
Yeah.
People, they constantly ask me about, well, who gets the offsets? And I'm like, I don't know. And I don't, because I don't really kind of get into it. Like once it was a large consulting firm that you would recognize, and I won't name it,
yeah.
Was looking into spending a whole lot of money and buying these carbon offsets. And they were like, well, what's the carbon offset of the trees you plant? And I'm like, well, pick a number, right?
Exactly.
And as a math engineer kind of guy, I love metrics. I love details. I love facts. I promise you.
Yeah.
But the simple reality is that when it comes to trees and carbon, it's a really wide bell curve, and the rough center is just that. It's very rough. Yeah. Because it depends on the species, it depends on when you plant it, it depends on where you planted it, it depends on where the ground cover crops, and whether or not there was drought. And you can't put a carbon meter on each freaking tree, right? It's just not going to happen. You can make, broad estimates. So I do appreciate at least some of these businesses starting to, try to do something, because, in many people's minds, carbon credits are legit. Yeah. And sometimes they are and sometimes they aren't. I'm not an expert.
Yeah.
Kind of on purpose. But when I did the calculation, I said, okay, listen, let's just say broad brush, the middle of the curve is here, and this is the price per tree, and this is the sequestration if you're just talking the biomass of the tree, and factor in survival rates and the phase of the moon and whether or not you're a Capricorn, blah, blah, all this stuff, right? And I still came out with almost an order of magnitude cheaper for the company to just plant the frickin' trees, right?
Yeah.
And now that doesn't get them off the hook for polluting,
yeah,
but that's something that's outside, that's off topic for me.
Yeah.
I can say, yes, they are planting trees. Is it enough? Is it offset? Not for me to decide, but I can tell you trees are getting planted, and here are the benefits. It doesn't, let's say that they can continue to chuff sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere. There's other people and other laws against that kind of stuff who know more about that than me, and I'll let them handle that.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate it. Okay, so let's get into Forest Planet. Looks like you started the organization January 2017. Is that right?
January 18th. We're a Capricorn.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. Love it. Okay. So talk more about the organization, the work you do. Am I remembering correctly? You threw some dance parties during the pandemic. Is that right?
Just before, and then some virtual ones during. But so the model with Forest Planet is that after leaving Trees for the Future, my heart was really into that. Honestly, I really felt that was my last job. Yeah. So what do I do? Well, the first thing you do is you go to Ireland and you go biking, right?
Yes.
As one does, right?
Of course.
To just clear your head. And then when I came back, since I was effectively COO of that group, people were like saying, well, Hank, would you just start your own? Your passion's in it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I know back office and I know marketing and I know working with businesses, because at 10, 15 cents a tree, businesses can sort of make a sustainability statement for not much money.
Yeah.
Right. And that's good. And consumers like that. Yeah. And, having had my own ad agency for a while, I can talk about market share and mind share and all that. And people were say, well, why don't you start your own? I said, well, I really honestly don't have a whole lot of direct experience in the field, planting the trees, getting the fingernails dirty. I don't, that wasn't my job. And, spinning up my own program in the developing world would take millions of dollars and take forever. And they're like, well, you don't have to do that. Just sub it out. And I was like, no, I can't do that. And I thought about it. And I go, actually, yes, I can. And in fact, that's a better model. So, yeah, because I already knew of a couple and rolled up my sleeves and found some more of these are homegrown organizations that are really well run, that are way below the radar. They're in the hills of Tanzania or the mountains of Morocco or wherever in Indonesia, and they're chugging along, and they're all homegrown and they're doing a good job. They just need more money. Yeah. They just need more cash. And I'm like, hold that thought. That's what I can do. So they love me because I'm their sales guy. They don't have to pay. So the model with Forest Planet is, we sell low and buy slightly lower, but it's kind of like a white label where 95% of my time is spent actually raising the money and raising awareness. And when it comes to time to plant the tree, I write a check to someone who knows what the heck they're doing. And everybody wins. And then obviously I need to do a monitoring. I have a third-party company that does financial analysis and bad actor checks. And all my organizations have to fill out paperwork, once a year and make sure that there's nothing hinky going on. But then also when we're doing a tree planting program in a particular area, they need to give me GPS coordinates. And a lot of companies have these now. They can make what they call the polygon, and they can send that to me. And then I have another company based in Spain that does satellite monitoring of that area. And there's a great blog post on my website that shows the before, during, and after of a lot of these places. It's pretty incredible. And the calculations that they can do aren't just the photos. They're something called NDVI, normative differential vegetation index. It just basically can look at it's a spectral analysis. It can look at the green and say, yeah, no, that's scrub green, not old growth forest green. So there's all kinds of stuff that these guys can do. And in fact, GMV is the company that I work with. I met them at the Hera Hub here in DC.
Awesome.
So Julia hooked me up with them, and I'm a very happy customer. There's a big giant aerospace company based in Spain, but they have an office here in DC just doing this because people are wanting to do a little more rigorous carbon calculations and monitoring. So that's the model. It's like anything else. It's just it took my own blood, sweat, and tears and money and 6 different part-time jobs to get the thing going. But we're coming in on our first millionth tree, which is fine, but I need to be doing those every week, not every 5 years. So we're accelerating that and building more of the corporate partners, building more of the followers, because we have some good stories. Because at the end of the day, I think what we're selling is hope that, look, things can be transformed pretty quickly and pretty inexpensively and reliably. So there is no greenwash.
Yeah.
Right. So when you're talking carbon, when I'm talking to a brand, I say, listen, you're talking carbon. Number one, no one knows what that means. Number two, it's an invisible gas.
Yeah.
No one's going to get a mental on that. So if you want to affiliate your brand with something positive, just say tree and people have an image and they instantly have a positive reaction, because I think it's just baked into our species.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, the work you're doing, Hank, is remarkable and probably one of the most important things that we can all do to hopefully, at least slow down the damage that we have done to this planet. I mean, it is luckily front and center of media every single day now. I mean, people are finally waking up to the fact that we've, just destroyed the place. So I am so excited about the work you're doing. I want to get to, I know you have an event in November, a screening, a film. I want to get to that. But before I do, so you may not know this about me, Hank, but I'm a big dancer, meaning like not an organized dancer. Like I'm like Elaine from Seinfeld kind of dancer, right? Like just silly, like love just going out and just, being silly kind of thing. So I want to hear more about these dance parties that you threw.
Right. Like I'm also an event producer, right? And when I'm trying to get my brand out there and sort of communicate that, look, trees can be anywhere and everything, and it can be in an event. So we had, before the pandemic, we had in-person film screenings. During the pandemic, we had actually pop-up bike tune-ups because everybody was riding a bike. Yeah. So you could come by for free, and we were outside, we had masks on to still really engage people and whatever. But I'm an 80s junkie, right? That's my era, and I love that music. And there's a great DJ I know here, and he's got this huge video library and all that. So yeah, it was February 29th, 2020. We had a club, we found a club. I mean, it's the old classic hire a hall and rent a band type thing.
Yeah.
But I got the DJ to come in. We had almost 170, 180 people. It made money. Everybody had a blast. It was on a Saturday night, but we were going to move it to a Thursday. So trees got planted and people had fun, right? And the costumes that people dressed up and they sideways hair and everything it was just awesome. Because the videos were gone, and everybody just sort of danced and yelled, and I had a blast. And of course, 24 hours later, everything shut down.
Yeah.
Right. So, I'm always thinking about, okay, well, what can I do that engages people, that gets our brand out? Because if you just come up and say, hey, I'm Forest Planet, you've never heard of me, can I have money? That's one thing. Yeah. If you come up to them and say, hey, do you want to go to an 80s dance and have a lot of fun? Oh yeah, proceeds help to plant trees. Better value proposition, right?
Absolutely.
So we migrated online. We used the Twitch platform to do a global video dance party to plant 10,000 trees. That was in 2021. We had almost like 900 people from around the world.
That's so great.
Yeah, and we raised money. We had sponsors, and we really pushed the envelope for Twitch, and everybody seemed happy with that. And then we tried to do it again early this year, and for reasons I don't know why it didn't work so well. But then we figured, okay, it's safe to come back out. Let's try to do another film screening. But we did that in March, and still there was another bump of infections here in the DC area. Mm-hmm. That didn't work, even though the movie was great. And then the venues were like, we were shut down for 2 years, so we had to make that up. So they jacked up their prices. Yeah. Blah, blah, blah. I'm sorry, I'm banging on.
No.
This is how it got to where it is. The distributor of the environmental film said, hey, we have this on-demand model where, you pay your royalty fee and we'll give you the password and the link. And anybody with a password and link can watch it within like a 60-hour window.
Nice.
Right. So that means that you can engage people all over the planet, right? Absolutely. And I can have corporations get involved whose target markets are in Europe. Fine, whatever. So it's not like a time specific. So that's what we're doing. And the film that we showed earlier this year kind of matches our zeitgeist. It's called From Seed to Seed. It's a very positive movie. The filmmaker is German, raised in Canada, Katrina Stiefenhofer. Beautiful movie about organic farmers or different farmers and on the spectrum of we're conventional, but we're going organic, or we're halfway organic, or we're completely organic, or whatever. And it just follows them through a whole season of 2017, what happened. And it was very well done with the music and how it looked and all that. And it was also very hopeful, in that it said, listen, we can solve these problems. We got issues with soil. We got issue with food security. We got all these issues and they need to be addressed, but these people are doing it. And this is how, right? Which just kind of fits the zeitgeist of Forest Planet. Yeah, we got all these issues. I'm not sugarcoating anything, but we're fixing it. There are ways to do it. So it was a good movie, but no one showed up. right? Because COVID and everything else.
Yeah.
So they decided, well, tell you what, why don't we try the on demand? I'm like, okay, that could be a good model. So November 4th at noon East Coast time is when the curtain goes up, and anybody who registers has all weekend to watch a 87-minute movie. That's a very good film, and they can watch it as many times as they want. And we're going to see how that model goes. So again, we're trying to get our brand out there. We're not like Nature Conservancy or some of these big organizations, the Sierra Club, which are all great shops. So rather than ask someone for $10 and say, hey, why don't you give me $10 and you get to watch a cool movie?
Yeah.
And the proceeds will plant some trees. So I think that model is something we want to do going forward, because the sort of distributor, they've got a whole library of these, and I can go through and curate and select the ones that I like, and really kind of frankly stay away from the gloom and doom, the world's ending, because I think people have enough of that. Show me the people who are having solutions or maybe making progress, because I know they exist.
Absolutely.
And that's what we'll be doing, I think. And that'll build our global audience and then give some people something of value.
I love it. Yeah. $10. I mean, it's what a brilliant idea. I'm excited. I've got your Eventbrite page up. I'm going to sign up and participate. Yeah. It looks amazing. What a great idea. And I just love, Hank, the fact that you're so creative with how you're approaching the market. So many nonprofits do this, big gala, and you buy your ticket and you sit at the big table. It's like, come on, I love that you're being so creative.
I got nothing against big galas. I'm fun. Those are fun too, but they are. There's too many organizations that I know of that is the only thing that they do.
Yeah.
Their big thing that they do every year. It works for them, and they've got blinders on to other options. And I'm like, okay, well, I mean, with Forest Planet, we're really, really trying to spread it all out between small dollar donor, large dollar donor, foundation grants, but all these creative events either that we're doing or that other people are doing, like what we did with the DC United, which is our local soccer team, earlier this year. They wanted to have a sustainability night. Actually, this was last year I met them. They wanted to have a sustainability night, as opposed to, Latin Heritage Night or Virginia Tech Night or, whatever. And but they hadn't figured out what they were going to do until I showed up and said, well, you could plant a tree for each ticket. It's only 15 cents. And like, oh, okay, sold. Thank God you're here. So I'm like, all right. So we did that last fall, and then we did it again earlier this year. It was a big Saturday night game. It was in April. It was practically sold out at Audi Field. And it didn't 20,000 trees in one night. It cost them $3,000. It was nothing. So I'm now showing that to other mini sports teams. And then there's some big universities that have giant stadiums, and you can just list them. And they're from the Midwest, where I just was talking to a lot of them. And they want to do something with the basketball season potentially, but also do a sustainability game next season where they have, 70, 80, 90,000 people in their stadium for a football game, because brands pay for that. So it's all kind of, the good news is that what I'm selling can be productized. Yeah. And a lot of nonprofits, God love them, can't really productize it. Like, I think it was a Defenders of Wildlife, they're all about the wolves and whatever. It's hard to say, for every $100, we support a wolf den. They can't really make that connection, even though they do support the wolves. They do great work. I'm just lucky enough to be in an area that can be productized and boiled down. 15 cents plants a tree. And that's simple, easy for corporate partners to get behind as well.
I love it. Awesome. Well, Hank, if our listeners want to get in touch with you, reach out, learn more, where's the best place for them to go?
Sure. Just Hank at Forest Planet, one word, forestplanet.org.
Perfect. And forestplanet.org is the website. I even see you've got some swag there. You got some products. You've got information.
What you want? We got it.
You got it all.
T-shirts. We got a hat. We'll hook you up.
Awesome. I love it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Hank. I've really enjoyed learning about your work.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and your community.
Thank you for joining this week's episode of Flight Club, sponsored by Hera Hub. We look forward to sharing more success stories with you soon.